We live in a tiny home. We don't have access to just we don't have rooms just for our animals. We don't have an outdoor heated shed, as we're living just as frugally as many of you are. If you want to make it through what we are experiencing as a society and throughout the world right now, you are going to need to start controlling the entire life cycle of certain aspects of your life. You're going to need to control either seed to cultivation of your plant life. You're going to need to have fruit trees. You're going to need to have chickens or goats, or you're going to need to have a way to feed those animals. Today, I want to talk to you about a Patreon card that we sent out a couple of months ago, and this was on mealworms. I'm going to read the back to you. Our Patreon members ask us to sometimes make these into viable videos here on YouTube so that we can each learn from what we're seeing today. Being able to provide a food source that requires little maintenance is essential to preparedness planning now, and even more so during a crisis. I think that we can all agree on that. The common mealworm. Mealworms are the larval stage of the mealworm beetle. It goes on to say the scientific name. The darkling beetle is the common name for it. They are holometabolic. This means that they go through 4 stages of life. Those stages are egg, larva, pupa, and then adult. The entire cycle of life can take months, and it depends on a lot of environmental factors. That can be the temperature that they're at, what type of access to water they have. Mealworms are one of those creatures that are going to have the highest survival rate, no matter where you're at, whether you're in Moscow, Russia, whether you're in Florida in the United States, whether you're in California, whether you're in South America. They can be cultivated and they can be used everywhere that you're at. Once mealworms become beetles and then they mate, the females lay anywhere from 100 to 500 eggs. They can lay up to 800 eggs at a time, mostly viable. You need to provide them with a source of food. That food comes in the bedding that you're going to give them. That's oatmeal. We use the same exact oatmeal that we eat here. We have eaten these mealworms because we control their entire life cycle. We control what they eat. We control their water. The water that we have to give them is just a potato that is split in half. You leave it with the wet side up so that the moisture doesn't touch the oats and create a mildew or mold problem for you. And their entire life cycle sits right before us. Now, what you'll want to do to raise them is get a batch from a pet store. You can get a batch from online. Place them into a tub. We use the storage totes that you can get. They're like Rubbermaid storage totes. You'll use oats at the bottom. You want to give them a good couple of inches so that they can burrow and get away from each other. Then you want to put a potato that has been cut in half, wet side up. The mealworms and beetles are going to eat the oats and they're going to get their water source from the potato. Now we separate our pupa and our beetles, but this is not essential to this cycle. If you want to keep the cycle going over and over again, what you're going to want to do is not take out more than 30% of the mealworms at a time, so a little bit less than 30%. And you're going to do that so that this cycle is in perpetuity. It just perpetuates itself. If you want to, you can separate the beetles like this. And what you're doing each time that you separate them, or the pupa stage here like this, when you separate them, you're just giving each individual creature the highest chance of it surviving. So the beetles won't be eating the mealworms if they don't have access to the oats or the potato. The mealworms won't be munching on the pupa stage. You're just kind of giving each individual part of that life cycle the best chance that it has to survive, and then in turn give you and your family the most that you need. Now you might say, okay, well, what am I really going to use this for? If you don't have the ability to feed your chickens, if you don't have the ability to feed your ducks, your creatures, anything out there that needs a protein source, you're going to run into trouble. Then if you don't have the ability to have some sort of protein source yourself, mealworms right here, they have a higher protein source than meat. So more protein in this cup of mealworms than if I was to have this cup of red meat or this cup of chicken. That means that you and your family always have access to that. Now, anybody who says, okay, well, I think that's disgusting, I would never eat a bug. The FDA in the United States of America allows a certain number of bugs into your food every day. So your mac and cheese, your stovetop stuffing, your flour, your sugar, yeah, it's been bleached and you might never see it, but they allow a certain amount of bug droppings, which is a little bit more disgusting in my opinion, and actual bugs. So you have eaten them before. My wife and I did it just to make sure that we didn't have any sort of allergic reaction to it. You know, we have a family that has high sensitivity to some food allergies. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any reaction, because I'd much rather have to pump some Benadryl or an epinephrine pin now than I would if there's no access to medical care. So we fried them up in some oil. You can fry them up in butter or fat or lard, whatever it might be. You can just boil them into your rice. No matter what it is, they're going to add a certain source of protein and enrichment to your food. So their protein content, if I remember right, it's about double that of beef, depending on the different methods of cultivation and enrichment and the things that you give them access to. And you can do things to increase that as well. I would definitely suggest that you guys get started now. This isn't the type of thing that's going to give you an overnight success. It is going to take a little bit of time. Like I said, it can take weeks to months to get to the different stages. And when you buy them online, you're only going to get the actual mealworm stage. If you try to purchase the beetle stage, you're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money, and it's never going to be worth it for you. Definitely get the mealworms. Put them in a tub. Now we have them in temperatures as low as like 50 degrees and have no problem. The mealworms slow down a little bit, the beetles slow down a little bit, but as soon as the day comes, they just come right back to life. They're really one of those survival farming or cultivation or livestock things that you can do. Everybody can do this, whether you're in an apartment. We live in a tiny home. We don't have access to just we don't have rooms just for our animals. We don't have an outdoor heated shed, as we're living just as frugally as many of you are. So we live in a tiny home, and space is definitely a consideration that we take into everything that we do. One of those things is how we were going to raise these. So we have 2 to 3 tubs at a time. Those are separated into just mealworms, and then we'll move a certain amount over just of beetles and pupa. And in doing that, we are going to have massive amounts, and I'm talking thousands and thousands of mealworms at a time. So what you'll do throughout the day, we're going to make some more videos here soon on different apartment ways that you can have meat production, different apartment ways that you can have egg production. What you'll do with these, even if you just have backyard chickens, or even if you're just doing it to show your children the life cycle of an animal during this tumultuous time. If you have chickens in the backyard, you're going to just take a handful of them at a time every couple of days, and you're just going to go throw them into the chicken coop. Your chickens are going to love every second of this. Now, once the beetles die off, because their life is finite, you have a source of calcium for your chickens. So where people right now don't buy chicken feed that has oysters in it, oyster shells, shellfish shells, this has just as much calcium in it as those products, maybe even more, because they're only giving you a certain amount of calcium per cup of chicken feed. So you have the dead shells here of the beetles that have met the end of their life cycle. You can collect those, and it's a great project for kids. We have our children come, and this is part of their their daily routine is they separate the larva from the pupa. They do all of these things to help the homestead out. So you can have your family members, or you can just sit down and do it, and you separate them. You give some to your chickens. You can give some to friends so that they can start their own culture. It can be just like sourdough used to be, or sourdough still is. People will start sourdough cultures, and they'll grab off a little bit and give it to their friend Mary, give it to their friend John, and say, hey, here's a little recipe card. So something like this that says, hey, here's exactly what you need to do with this. It doesn't take anything special. All you need is some oats and a potato. Anybody can do this. So it's something that is going to give you a forever life cycle of food, emergency food for your family. If you had to supplement protein in one form, it's going to give you a constant and replenishing method of food for your chickens. You can supplement scraps from your table. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can have the kids go out and grab dirt. You can pour these into the dirt, and that can be enrichment for your chickens, because they're going to have to go and scratch them up. There's so many different things that you can do with this, and you can do it in any type of environment. Your apartment, your tiny home, your 2,000 square foot house. You can do it in a shed that you have in the backyard, on your back porch. There's very little smell. It's not like cockroaches. You know, we breed cockroaches for our chickens also, and cockroaches have the ability to make people hypersensitive to them, get a long-term lung allergy kind of to them. Never had any experience with anything like the mealworms because they're just not kicking up that same kind of dust. They're not shedding the same kind of things. You can put a lid on top. The only thing that you're going to want to watch out for is moisture. If you run into a moisture problem, you're going to have to tackle that. Now, you can get things like oat mites. One of the easiest ways to tackle that is to put Vaseline on the side of the tub. The mites aren't going to be able to get out. They'll fulfill their life cycle in there. You can exchange the oats out. You can do lots of stuff. They're very easy. I really want you guys to get started on this, because if you don't, we are going to be stuck in this cycle of this downturn, of the financial collapse that we don't have a way to get out of, and we have to start controlling our own destiny here. We have to control our own independence. If we don't start taking control of that, and if we let the consumerism, the capitalism, the governmental control market push us further and further toward the edge, there's going to be no turning around. This is an overlooked survival project for you and your family that you can get started on right now. Guys, I want to say a special thank you to our Patreon members. You know, we send these out for all of our Patreon members at the $10 level. These 5 survival cards in the mail every month, and I want to thank them for asking us to put these here on YouTube, these videos, so that you can see what is happening. You can get that idea to get started for yourself. Please go out there and get started on some mealworms as soon as possible. If you have any comments or any ideas, please leave them in the comment box below. Hit the subscribe button, the bell alert, so that you get alerted every time a new video comes out. I want to thank you guys just for being here, being a part of this community, and giving us, sharing ideas with each other so that we can start to move beyond this overwhelming sometimes feeling of inability to get ahead, and we can start to get past that so that we can push through and persevere to the other side of this. Thank you guys for being who you are, doing what you do, all the support that you show me and my family. Don't forget to leave any comment and hit that subscribe button so that you get alerted to a new video every time it comes out. This week's Full Spectrum News is brought to us in part by hybridlight.com. Make sure you use the code FSS20 if you're going to get 20% off of your solar lights. And USABerkeyfilters.com. In the background, you might hear the water trickling through my Berkey. And sorry if you've heard that the entire video. Use the code FSS10. You're going to get 10% off of your order. From my family to yours, please stay safe.